One of the few universal truths in life is that we all fail, a lot. It's a normal part of the human experience, just like breathing. In fact, it's not just normal, it's essential. Your growth as a person and as a professional has a lot to do with how you understand and use the setbacks you face. Unfortunately, for far too many people, the experience of failure is highly negative. The word itself has taken on a huge negative stigma. People don't want to focus on their failures or have others know anything about them. That's too bad, because they truly do represent the key to your success. In this course, I'll help you transform how you think about and use the setbacks that occur in your life. You can improve how you think about failure, what you learn as a result, and how you use failure to make improvements, ensuring that failure always leads to progress. Let's get started. Understanding failure is pretty straightforward. We love and celebrate success. Thus, we dislike and shun its opposite, failure. But that's not really good logic. You see, it depends on how you define things. I want you to stop thinking about success and failure as chronic states. A much more productive perspective is to view success as an achievement in one defined area. In contrast, failure is merely one part of a process of learning that helps increase the chance of future success. Now, from that perspective, it seems so useful, but we know that arriving at this conclusion is very difficult for most people. The reason is fear of failure. In fact, we know that fear of failure is the primary reason people fail to set personal goals and always set weak professional goals. It's important to note that this fear is not really driven by our level of self-confidence. It affects everyone because our fear of failure is created socially. To be frank, it starts with our educational systems. Most of them train young people to value a good grade and to fear a bad grade, making fear of failure a deeply ingrained mental process from our earliest days. On top of this, we live in a society that is based on competition. In addition to sports competitions, we compete for scholarships, internships, jobs, promotions, and so on. No one wants to lose. That's why people avoid new jobs and career paths and refrain from trying new hobbies. They fear the very real learning curve that goes with doing anything new. They fear not getting it right. They fear others questioning their competence and intelligence. They fear a lack of acceptance. These fears can be justified, but they are not productive. There's a better choice. You see, our main mental mistake is to overfocus on one failure incident instead of stepping back to see the big picture, to view our average self, so to speak, instead of only one data point. You have to remember that any given failure is but one frame in a very long piece of film. It's real and it can be painful, but it does not define you. When you give a failure too much weight and let it define you like a label, instead of letting it ignite learning, well, you start a predictable failure cycle. We avoid failure. We avoid dealing with it when it does happen. The failures pile up mentally, causing you a huge cognitive burden until, finally, you have a breakdown and you question your worth. But it doesn't have to be that way. The transformation of how you view failure begins right now. You only have to remember one basic piece of logic. Failure is normal and necessary. I want you to think about that idea. You see, when you accept and embed that idea into your daily thinking routine, that's when the negative idea of failure begins to fade, while positive ideas about learning and improving become your focus. Let's start with a powerful idea. Everyone fails. When you fail, you need to remember that you're in great company. Before she was the queen of television, Oprah Winfrey was fired from her first television job. Walt Disney started multiple companies that completely failed before successfully creating the Disney empire. Now, what makes them so special? Is it their amazing talent and intelligence? Maybe, but most experts point to something else. Work ethic, tenacity, and a strong desire to not give up. They were willing to fail many times. While most people would have quit after one big failure, they refused. Instead, they did what all accomplished people do. They embraced the success cycle, which goes like this: try, fail, learn, succeed. Now, the first three parts, try, fail, learn, sometimes have to be repeated many times to produce one particular success. It's the same for everyone. The successful people in any domain all follow the same pattern. They don't feel shame because they produced work that was good but not yet great, just because they're at the bottom of a new learning curve. Instead, they urgently want to learn and climb the curve faster. They really embrace that old saying, you have to break a few eggs to make a great omelet. Let me state that one a little differently. The process of cooking can become as enjoyable as the meal itself. You can learn to love trying and learning just as much as achievement. When you truly embrace this simple process, the benefits can be profound. For example, you learn to become resilient to the negative aspects of failure, meaning over time you experience less fear of failure and less shame associated with failure. You also become more persistent in the face of challenge. You gain expertise faster, and you become a smarter risk taker. All of these things work together to increase your odds of success. It's all about how you mentally frame the situation. The goal isn't to achieve success. The real goal is to develop the mentality and the conditions that make success likely. Get started right now. Find a quiet space and something to write with. Now, when was the last time you tried something new or really challenging? If it's tough to answer that question, well, then it's about time right now. When was the last time you really failed? Let me challenge you here. If it's been several years, well, maybe you're playing it too safe, thus wasting some of your potential. Now it's your turn to use the success cycle so that in the long run, your failures only hurt a little, while the successes they help you create will produce great satisfaction. Earlier, I'd mentioned that it's too bad that failure always gets a bad rap. It's too often stigmatized, and it shouldn't be that way. In reality, there are different types of failure. Some good, some bad. Let me propose three distinct types of failure: personal errors, external factors, and striving effects. Okay, the first is personal errors. These are mistakes that happen because of a lack of ability, poor focus, or bad fit between the individual or team and the requirements of the work. This is really the type of issue that gives failure a bad name. Organizations reduce this classic, simple type of failure by fine-tuning their talent management processes, including hiring, job analysis, and training and development programs, so that the right people are doing the right jobs. Up next is a category I call contextual factors. These refer to things outside of your control. All projects face uncertainty. All processes are imperfect and lead to wasted time, excess cost, or quality issues. You just can't predict everything. For example, who's going to quit or become ill? Which vendor will surprise you with a delay? Or when the economy takes an unexpected dip? Clearly, these issues are outside of your control. You can, however, do two things to try and mitigate any pain associated from unexpected failures. First, for any important work, develop your plan, then work on backup plans or contingencies. Disaster planning is an important part of any project. The second thing you can do is an occasional audit to ensure that your team and your organization are using the best available technologies and the best in-class methodologies to execute your strategies. That might include a particular piece of software or some industry-specific lean practice. Who knows? Do the competitive analysis to always ensure you're using world-class tools and practices. All right, the third and most interesting class of failure is what I refer to as striving effects. These are failures that occurred in the service of change, improvement, and innovation. I think of two in particular. The first is pioneering. That means trying something new that hasn't been done. In essence, to test your hunch or belief, you've got to deviate and do something new. That's essential for learning, but sometimes it hurts. Whether you're stretching your personal competencies, tweaking a process, or offering an idea for a new service, new implies risk. The second type is all about pushing your limits. That's when you or your team tries to take on more work than ever before, more clients, bigger projects. It's generally the same type of work you're used to, but you're stretching in an attempt to increase your capacity. You see, in many ways, the system is set up to discourage unnecessary risk. Just think about the common employee performance evaluation. They're all about short-term successes and are not set up to validate short-term mistakes in the service of big, long-term possibilities. So what do you do with this reality? There is no right or wrong answer here, but you do have to ask yourself if you want to play it safe most of the time or choose instead to take some of the risks associated with turning failures into great learning. If you make the latter choice, you'll be wise over time to align yourself with innovative and learning-oriented teams, bosses, and companies. In the end, the try, fail, learn, succeed process requires a little bravery. Just remember, there's strength in numbers. The more you associate with other professionals who believe in the process, the more you mitigate your risks and accelerate your learning. Everyone makes mistakes, but not everyone understands why they have to own their mistakes. It's because owning your mistakes really does represent the first step in learning from a setback. It's about accepting that you're responsible for some or all of whatever negative outcome just occurred. There are several important reasons to do this, but first, it might be useful to mention why it's so common for people to not own up to their errors. There's really three reasons. First, it's so easy to blame someone else. To me, blame is just an acronym that stands for barely legitimate, almost meaningless excuse. The blame game is never productive. Next, people conscious of the fact that they might be partially to blame don't want to be publicly associated with an error, so they don't speak up and own their contribution. Finally, unconsciously, we often resist owning our mistakes as a defensive mechanism in order to preserve our self-confidence and our belief in our own competence. Well, that's all too bad because, believe it or not, in the long run, owning your mistakes can be very useful to your development as a professional. You have to accept your imperfection. We all do. This does not mean you're accepting mediocre performance or low standards for yourself. It simply means that you understand we're all flawed and make mistakes, and that you wish to use this reality to push yourself, to motivate yourself to strive harder. And the process is very simple. It goes like this. Honestly seek to understand your contribution to the mistake. Admit it to the person or group who might be relevant. Offer an explanation if needed. Tell them what you've learned or what you intend to do to reduce the likelihood this mistake happens again. Then follow through and do what you said you'd do. That's it. And here are the benefits that will make this process worth it. First, you'll learn faster and more effectively because you're being proactive about your errors and seeking to understand them and fix them. Next, you'll be signaling to others that you have integrity and that you know how to step up and take responsibility for your actions. You'll also be revealing yourself to be more human and authentic, since you can admit your imperfections. In the eyes of others, that makes you a lot more relatable. All of these together suggest that you'll be building stronger relationships and earning respect because you're choosing to deal with the reality we all face, and you're doing it in a positive way. To summarize, you have to be ready to smile, laugh, and learn the next time your imperfections become apparent, because you know that for a smart person, they're just catalysts for learning. Owning up to your mistakes is step one. Taking corrective action is step two. So let's talk about how to figure out what went wrong. The first thing I want you to do is focus on adopting a learning mentality. That's a mindset focused on understanding and improving. The goal is the acquisition of new skills and insights. The backbone of this type of mentality is an openness to possibilities. Openness is somewhat driven by personality, but it's also a choice you can make. You see, some people think that solving problems is about applying what you know, but that's only part of it. The real trick is to seek to find something new. So remember that openness is best viewed as a choice. Now, here's something interesting. Sometimes to move forward, you have to look backwards. A learning mentality is about new possibilities, but that's often created by learning from the past. That's why following a setback, you have to conduct a root cause analysis. That's a structured way to get past looking at the symptoms of a problem and start seeking the original or main cause of the problem you're facing. This starts by checking your assumptions. I want you to think about all the major parameters at play in the situation: the people, the resources, the processes, key costs, and so on. Are you assuming some can't change, that something won't change, or that a person won't cooperate? Your next task is to ask why at least 5 times. Let me give you an example. Let's say your employee James has lower than normal productivity for the last week. You want to know why that's happening. So go ask. Talk about the task expectations and the quality of his resources. Ask about the others with whom James interacts. Ask if there is a non-work issue that's affecting him. Maybe James is lacking ability or motivation. Maybe the root cause has little to do with James. But if you ask why enough, you just might find the source of the problem. The second thing I want you to do is realize that feedback is the fuel that will accelerate your learning process. They say 2 pair of eyes are better than 1, and it's usually true. Now, depending on the setback or mistake you're working on, you might seek input from your boss, a colleague, or even a customer. The point is simple. You can always reduce ambiguity faster by leveraging what others know about the specific problem you're working on. Go find 3 or 4 people with expertise about the people, processes, and technologies you'll likely encounter during your analysis. Never reinvent the wheel when you don't have to. The hardest part of determining what went wrong following a setback is making the choice to face the task and tackle it. That's how you turn a setback into a catalyst for future progress. When you're dealing with personal failures and setbacks, one of the smartest things you can do is step back and try to gain a wider perspective. You have to remember that when you fail, you're not alone. You're a part of a very large group. I want you to remember that every successful person fails a good bit, then learns, improves, and later becomes successful. It's inevitable and can't even be fun as you learn to embrace learning. Don't forget, this reality applies to everyone, including me. Before I was a well-known professional speaker, I was an unknown professional speaker with mediocre skills. I had to learn how to improve. This reality applies to individuals and also organizations. For example, consider these famous examples of failure followed by perseverance that resulted in success. Apple is now the world's leader in several product categories, but before there was an iPhone, there was the Apple Lisa and the Apple Newton tablet. Huge failures, which they used to learn and grow. Before J.K. Rowling made Harry Potter famous, the first book in the series was rejected 12 times, and the author was told not to quit her day job. These are all interesting, but here's my favorite. Can you guess who it is I'm talking about? He failed in business in 31, ran for the state legislature and lost in 32, tried business again in 33 and failed again. His sweetheart died in 35. He suffered a nervous breakdown in 36. He was defeated for a run at Congress in 43. Defeated again for Congress in 48. Defeated when he ran for the Senate in 55. Defeated for the vice presidency of the United States in 56. Ran for the Senate again in 58 and lost again, but somehow he never quit. And in 1860, Abraham Lincoln became the 16th president of the United States. So the next time you fail, remember this group to which you belong, because the question isn't, will you fail? We all do, even the greats. That's a given. The only question is whether or not you'll choose to learn something and persevere, because that's the foundation of success. People like others whom they perceive as human, not just professional. They love to sense competence in you, but they also enjoy knowing that you're imperfect because, well, they are too. And knowing that you have to deal with challenges and setbacks makes you more relatable. Unfortunately, too often, people don't feel that it's okay to openly discuss the basic fact that we're all imperfect. So they hide mistakes and avoid talking about failures. Let me challenge you to do the opposite. Healthy, productive, happy, successful people proactively deal with reality, and that includes admitting mistakes and learning from failure. The benefits are huge. You'll be viewed as more authentic, more trustworthy, and thus you'll be more approachable. That's when you begin to elicit more candor and honesty from others. Whether at work or anywhere in life, these things build stronger relationships that produce higher quality work and more creative work. First, occasionally openly talking about your setbacks makes you more human and authentic. In contrast, too many people indulge in simple bragging because they want to project strength. But listen, the only thing stronger is to project honest humanity. People like to know you're real. Mere knowledge of specific times you came up short, made a bad decision, or otherwise saw a project go up in flames is terribly useful in terms of helping others see past your accomplishments in order to see a more complete you. So from authenticity flows trustworthiness. To trust someone is to be willing to be vulnerable to them, to trust they'll be fair and have your best interests in mind. Now, after more authenticity and higher trustworthiness, what follows is magic. You become more approachable, and people become more candid and open. Whether you're in the role of a friend, parent, or boss, the best type of communication is always two-way. You collaborate instead of dictate. The more you share a complete human version of yourself, the more others will feel willing to share with you and even confide in you. People become more willing to take the risk of opening up and sharing real thoughts. Over time, this comfort and candor becomes reciprocal. They become a natural part of the give and take of productive relationships. It can be true of your relationships too, but you have to want to make that happen. That's how you define great relationships. Let's be clear. Using your mistakes, setbacks, and failures to build stronger relationships with others is only one benefit. Arguably, the biggest benefit is how these challenging situations will help you personally grow as a professional. Here, I'm referring to your mental skill set and disposition, your fundamental daily persona and how it will change and improve as you begin to learn to frame failures positively. It takes a lot of work to systematically think through what caused a failure and what to do about it. The good news is that with practice, you'll learn something useful and your daily attitude will become stronger. Let me be specific. By learning to embrace failure, you'll grow stronger in terms of compassion, humility, courage, and perspective. Let's think about each one briefly. First is compassion. Humans are wired to judge and sometimes think arrogant thoughts. The more you choose to openly face your failures, own them, and learn from them, the more you'll be able to see that others are as imperfect as you are, and they too sometimes fail. Instead of judging, you'll be a little more sensitive to what others might be experiencing. You'll act with more compassion, and they most often will reciprocate with compassion. Next is humility. Now, don't get me wrong, any upwardly mobile professional must be good at proper self-promotion. However, as the sting of initial failure fades, a new sense of humility emerges. It's that sense that no matter how good your skills or accomplishments might be, you know just how imperfect you are. Thus you act a little more modest and kind. When it's sincere, humility is respected and it helps build rapport. Or how about courage? You might expect me to include passion in this little list. No, I assume you have strong passion, thus you're trying to better yourself by watching this course. What you need is courage. Passion can oddly remain inside and unused. It's courage that lets passion out. It's courage that allows passion to support change and improvement in your life. The more you face failure positively, the more you'll build courage. Finally, learning from failure gives you improved perspective, a broader, more informed, long-term perspective. When you begin to embrace the ideas in this course, you begin to see that one failure is just one data point, one among many millions that will define your career or your life. You come to understand that who you are is really defined by the average of all those data points, not just a single project or incident. That puts failure in perspective and reminds you to keep learning so that you're always improving your average. There are many ways for you to improve as a person and as a professional. You can proactively learn things from a mentor, read books, earn degrees, complete projects, get promotions. They're all very useful, but maybe the most useful is learning from your failures even more than your successes. When you begin to apply the ideas we've discussed, soon enough, you'll stop viewing failure as a personal shortcoming and see it for what it is, the best way to improve. Let me close out this course with this advice. Remember the success cycle. Try, fail, learn, succeed. That process applies to you, me, and everyone in between. You can kickstart the process of using your new perspective on failure with a little retrospective analysis. Do some thinking and try to identify the top 2 or 3 projects or situations that represent your biggest personal failures in the last 5 years. Okay, for those top few failures, ask why it happened. Try a little root cause analysis as we discussed earlier. Reach out to a few key players who were also involved to gain their frank and candid insight about your role in the matter. Now, compare notes across those 2 or 3 situations. It's likely that part of the explanation for each failure is similar. The point is that if you see a cause that is recurring, that's where you have to start to focus, where you can begin to embrace the success cycle. Try, fail, learn, and succeed.